Vincent, Ashanique Romney, Destiny Leach, and Adelisi Calderon Garcia for being selected to represent St. Kitts and Nevis in the Under-14 Caribbean Football Union Challenge Series, which was held in Antigua from the 18th to the 28th of August. Let me move quickly, members of the press and public, to a few other updates. I would want to ask the press to help me publicize the fact that the 10th Tourism Human Resource Conference will be held from October 30th to November 1st in Nevis under the theme Navigating the Next Phase of Caribbean Tourism. Under this theme, we will focus on talent and technology 2024 and beyond, and will provide insights on how human resource development can be optimally leveraged to support the growth, development, innovation, and competitiveness of the Caribbean tourism sector. Nevis will be hosting this regional conference at the Four Seasons Resort. This is a CTO conference. We'll be hosting it at the Four Seasons Resort. Registration is now open. You can visit www.onecaribbean.org, onecaribbean.org, or contact the Ministry of Tourism on 469-0051 for further details. And so we are very proud that Nevis was selected to host this conference. It's a CTO regional conference, navigating the next phase of Caribbean tourism under the theme Talent and Technology 2024 and beyond. Let me switch gears to education. In preparation for the upcoming start of the school year, and incidentally, you ought to know that our schools, the preschools will open on September 4th, and the secondary schools, primary and secondary schools, will commence on September 6th. Those are the school dates this year. So September 4th for our preschools and September 6th for our primary and secondary schools. Those are the opening dates. We would have conducted a leadership summit in preparation for the reopening of schools, and the Department of Education would have hosted that leadership summit from July 21st to 25th at the Malcolm Guichard Park. And we have also conducted a back-to-school convocation, which was done on August 28th at the Malcolm Guichard Park under the theme Education for the Future, Learning, Growing, Succeeding Together. The feature speaker for that was our own Brownhillian, Aldane Claxton Jr. And the convocation signals the start of the school year for teachers and non-instructional staff. We would like to take this opportunity to bid farewell and say thank you to some persons who have resigned and or retired from the teaching service. We want to thank them for their service and contribution towards the development of education, the molding of our students, and the development of our island and country. These are the persons, I'm advised, who have retired or will be retiring effective September 1st. Ms. Jasmine Doe, who was the principal of the Charlestown Secondary School, Ms. Felicia Walters, who was the deputy principal at the Gingerland Secondary School, Ms. Norleen Smitten, who was the principal at the St. Thomas's Primary School, and Mrs. Althea Leiber, the deputy principal at the St. Thomas's Primary School. These persons have opted to move into retirement, and we would want to publicly register our thanks to them for their service over all these years. Let me also take the opportunity to welcome and commend some individuals who have now been elevated to leadership positions in our school system. Mrs. Jerose Walters, she will now head the St. Thomas's Primary School. Ms. Chrislyn Jeffers will now head the Violet O. Jeffers Nichols Primary School. And Ms. Catherine Seabrooks will now head the St. James's Primary School. And Mrs. Nicola Huggins Paris will now head the Charlestown Secondary School. I want to personally congratulate these 4 young women. All are below the age of 40, and all are women. And it really says something about the island and what we're trying to do in empowering women, in elevating women, but also in empowering youth and elevating youth. All are qualified, all have worked for long years in teaching, and we are delighted that they have taken up the challenge. Let me use this opportunity not only to congratulate them, but also to say to others in the teaching fraternity, in the Ministry of Education, that they must prepare themselves for leadership. Every year, the Ministry of Education will ask of teachers whether they intend to return and whether they are interested in leadership. And I have been quite astonished that a large number of them, duly qualified, have said that they're not interested in leadership. And that has created tremendous challenges for us in staffing our schools and ensuring that we have the right people in the right places. In fact, I'm aware that some individuals who were approached on this go-around, this time, have indicated that they are not interested. And so I'm appealing from this rostrum because we are only as good as the people. And it makes no sense for me for our people to go and prepare themselves, do their degrees, in some instances do their master's degrees, and then when called upon to lead, they say they're not interested in the responsibility. We really do need to do more and be willing to give more as we try to develop the island and the country. And so again, heartiest congratulations to Mrs. Jerose Walters, Ms. Christlyn Jeffers, Ms. Catherine Seabrooks, and Mrs. Nicola Huggins Paris, and I wish them only the best as they undertake this new role. The library services concluded the 33rd hosting of the annual Summer Library Program on Friday, 25th August 2023, and a total of 102 children will have participated. The theme for the program was Our Country, Our People, Our Future, Life Enrichment Through Skills. The staff there will now turn their attention to our Independence exhibition, focusing on the 40th anniversary of the Nevis Symphonic Band. The general public is encouraged, of course, to pay attention and stay tuned for more information. The Department of Youth is proud to announce that the awards ceremony will be held on September 28th for their Youth Impact 12 Awards. The 9 awardees are Shabana Powell in Education and Lifelong Learning, Christopher Clark for Volunteerism, Jalden Myers for Sports Excellence, Kerisha Powell for Youth Development, Hadia Tyson for Youth in Agriculture, Wentworth Smitten, Youth in Culinary Arts, Elisel Ramirez Dorset, Youth in Performing Arts, Jonathan Ward, Cultural and Historical Preservation, and Tivon Brown for Health and Well-Being. The ceremony will be held at Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park at 7 p.m., and we ask, of course, for the public to support our young people as we, again, lift them up, promote them, celebrate them, and show them that they are a critical part of what we're trying to do here in Nevis. The Ministry of Sports would have had their sports camps this year for the summer, and they had a very successful camp. They facilitated 240 children in areas of cricket, football, tennis, basketball, and swimming. And let me end this section by commending young Jaden Carmichael for making his season debut for the Trinidad and Tobago Knight Riders in the 2023 CPL tournament. Let me move quickly to Culturama. The Culturama festivities will have ended. We were celebrated in grand style from July 25th to August 5th this year. And we're very proud that for the 10th consecutive year, our festival was violence-free. I would want to go on record to commend the Nevis Division of the Royal St. Christopher Nevis Police Force and the leadership and the rank and file for doing an excellent job to deliver for 10 consecutive years a Culturama which was incident-free. Let me also congratulate the winners of the various competitions staged as part of Culturama 49, the Elizabeth Pemberton Primary School from the great parish of St. John's, represented by Tinaya Wills and Jaleem Sturge, were winners of the Republic Bank Mr. and Miss Talented Youth Pageant. The Nevis Community Development 5 were winners of the inaugural Bonnie Five-a-Side Panorama Contest. Miss Nevilla Douglas was winner of the Flow Miss Culture Swimwear Contest. Delhi Ranks, winner of the Groovy segment of the National Bank Soca Monarch Contest. Daddy Tusty, winner of the Power segment of the National Bank Soca Monarch Contest. King Hollywood, winner of the TDC Senior Kaiso Contest. Nikesha Henry, winner of the Bank of Nevis Limited Miss Culture Rama Queen Contest. Mango Fantasy, winner of the float category of the Culturama Street Parade. David's Dynasty, winner of the folklore category of the Culturama Street Parade. Four Seasons, winners of the fantasy category of the Culturama Street Parade. And the core band, Road March winners for Culturama 49. We would like to thank all participants in the various competitions held as part of Culturama 49, and we look forward to even greater participation as next year we celebrate Culturama 50 and our homecoming celebration, where we're inviting all Nevisians, Kittians, and friends of St. Kitts and Nevis to come home for Culturama 50 and to have their family reunions and the like. Next year, the dates have already been fixed. Culturama will be celebrated from July 25th to August 6, 2024. The Culturama Secretariat would wish to remind all that the Culturama 50 slogan competition is already open. In fact, it will end on September 15th, 2023. You're encouraged to submit your slogans to slogan@culturamanevis.com or drop them off at the Culturama Secretariat, now located upstairs the Philip St. Jean building in Ramsbury. The Culturama Secretariat also informs interested young ladies wishing to compete in the Culturama 50, Miss Culture Swimwear, and Miss Culture Queen pageant that the application process opens next week, Monday, on September 4th, and will close on November 30th. So they're not wasting any time at all. Culturama is truly well on its way. Culturama 50, the plans are making progress, and we encourage the public to get involved. The Nevis Disaster Management. Let me just say a word on that because, of course, we now find ourselves in the hurricane season, which will run until November 1st, I think. The Nevis Disaster Management successfully hosted its first annual summer safety camp during the period 14th to 18th of August. The camp facilitated 36 participants between the ages of 4 and 16. So this was a camp geared for the youth. And the objectives were geared towards mainstreaming disaster risk reduction, developing important life skills, and fostering a culture of safety within our communities. Some of the training activities: survival psychology. Children were taught to act responsibly in the event of being alone when a disaster emergency occurs. Wilderness foraging, shelter building, water safety, traffic safety, fire safety and prevention, and first aid. In fact, let me also commend our fire services, who also had a camp where they taught some of these disciplines as well. The idea really is to build resilience across the Nevisian community, to build awareness among our youth, especially about what to do if disaster or emergencies were to happen. And I would want to commend the disaster preparedness for their efforts in this regard. We want to thank Mr. Eldred Glassford and his colleagues for sponsoring the T-shirts for the participants and facilitators. And we want to thank UNICEF for providing the banners for the summer safety camp. Special thanks is also extended to the Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance for sponsoring the meals for the duration of the camp. The Nevis Disaster Management, in collaboration with the Montessori Academy and the Anglican churches, has also been highlighting coastal erosion hazard as part of its public awareness and education multi-hazard campaign for the month of August. And we thank the Anglican Church and thank the Montessori Academy for assisting us and partnering with us in this way. Members of the press, on September 7th, Thursday, September 7th, we are going to have a very significant event at the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park, at the visitor center there. And that will be the launch of the Daycare Assistance Subsidy Program under the purview of the Department of Gender Affairs. The department extends a warm invitation to the public to be there. And that is a program that has been developed coming out of consultations held with the public to seek to assist parents who require that financial assistance in terms of daycare for their children. It will cater for children who are under the age of 3, and we will cater for up to $300 per child per month in terms of a voucher system. We are limiting it to 2 children per family at this point, per household at this point. But the idea really was born out of a need that was explained to us and that we saw in providing some support for parents, most of them single mothers, who are struggling to pay for daycare. It is extremely difficult for us to demand of a single parent that he or she goes to work to provide for his or her children, but also ensures that those children have proper daycare. In the first contemplation of this project, in fact, it was one of the manifesto commitments made by the CCM as we campaigned, we had anticipated building a daycare center, that the government would actually build a center, staff it, and run it as a government-run daycare. However, the Honorable Janelle Nisbet, our new Minister of Health and Gender, she and her team would have looked at this and thought that it would be far more efficacious if, instead of us building a center of our own, that we would partner with existing daycare centers and provide through a voucher system assistance for those who need that assistance. And so we have called the daycare centers together. A meeting has been convened with them, and I'm told that the response was quite positive, that the government now will take on the responsibility to assist those families that require the assistance. Now, I'm speaking in this way because as a government, the Nevis Island Administration is of the view that government's role is to help those who need help. Not all of us are in the same position, financially or otherwise. Not all of us require financial assistance. Some of us do. And it is our view that the role of government is to help those who actually need the help. Put differently, it is not for government to put salt in the ocean which is already salt. I know sometimes people get into this debate where I'm a taxpayer too. And that is a great idea that we're all taxpayers. But government is there to help those who need help. Government is there to provide safety nets to those who need it. Government is there to provide a hand up to those who need it. And so these programs are means-tested programs. What I mean by that is that we will have to ensure that this relief is getting to the people that need it the most. So I don't want the public out there to think that, oh, the government is now paying for every child to go to child care, daycare. That is not the case, and that is not the intention. We are providing a program to assist those parents that need the assistance, and that is the position. And so the ministry and the department, they will conduct their own investigations to ensure that this voucher program for the daycare assistance subsidy, that it reaches those who need it. And this program will be explained more, as I said, because we have a launch, a public launch, on Thursday, the 7th of September at the Malcolm Guichard Recreational Park. I can't leave this subject without saying what I've been saying publicly some time before. At this program, I'm particularly proud of it because it came directly from an engagement that we had in the Hamilton area, where a mother was quite passionate about the difficulty she was having in affording daycare on her salary and not making a lot of money, but having her children. And of course, not making a lot of money doesn't mean that we don't love our children just as much and want the same type of care for our children. And that passion with which this single mother made her case, the logic, inescapable logic and good sense of her position, we decided that we had to do something about it. It is important because I know a lot of times people say, oh, governments don't listen. Well, we listened. We listened, we made a commitment, and thank God we are now on the cusp of honoring that commitment well within the first year of being back in office. And so I'm grateful to that parent, and I am sure through her advocacy, other parents across the island are now going to benefit. And good ideas come from all quarters. They're not necessarily purely resident within the cabinet. The cabinet is only a handful of people. And I continue to invite our citizens, when you have ideas, you have concerns, that you bring them. And this is a good example of an idea that did not come from us. It came from the community. And we think it's an excellent idea, and are happy that we can execute. The innovation by Minister Nisbet and her team should also be commended, because rather than the government having to spend to build a facility, to staff a facility, they came up with the idea of partnering with existing daycare facilities to make sure that the government is not competing with them. And I think that this really, again, demonstrates how our technocrats can bring real value to programs that the government is seeking to execute. And so I thank them as well for that. Let me switch briefly to public works. I would want to say to the people of Bath Village that we continue to undertake works there. Works have slowed down, yes, because the main works on the main road are done, but we are continuing some works now on the section of the late Mr. Thompson's residence to Mr. Dick's residence. At present, we are laying the concrete curbs and the driveway accesses are being dealt with. It's expected by the next time I'm here that that work should be substantially complete. The Public Works Department is currently building a road in Cotton Ground, reconstructing a road. They refer to it as Banjo Road. It's a road that several residents in the Upper Cotton Ground region use. It is opposite the entry to the Cotton Ground housing project. When complete, a new asphalt road of some just under 1,000 feet in length would have been constructed. At present, we're doing the curbs and the concrete driveways and expect to be paving there very soon. And I would want to publicly commend the Honorable Latoya Jones, because she has been a strong advocate, really consistent about this road and some other projects in that community. And I would want to commend her. She has never relented on this particular project. And this, just like the wall for the retaining wall at the Cotton Ground playing field, these were two things I know that she was relentless about, and I'm happy that we have been able to now deliver and hope that the residents here will get some relief. Rehabilitation and reconstruction work has commenced on the Pump Road and the Charlestown Bypass Road, Pinnis Bypass. That road has so many names, but going from Water Department all the way around to Pinnis, that's what we call the Bypass Road. The contractors started paving. They've already installed some drain pipes, and we expect that significant work is going to start there. They have said to us that the work should last for 100 days. And so we are hopeful that they can get it done, and we ask for the public's patience. There will be some rerouting of traffic. We know that's a very heavily used thoroughfare, but we ask for you to be patient. The idea is that when it's done, that we will have a much better surface. That road, let me remind you, was done some 20 years ago. And so this is an opportunity now to have a major refurbishment of that particular road. Let me speak very briefly, because the last time I was here, Mr. LaShawn Dixon from the St. Kitts Nevis Observer asked about the current debt status of the NIA and how the government is managing. Well, I can say the government is managing. We're paying our debt on time and in full, and I'm grateful to the good people at Finance who continue to do the necessary to ensure that we pay our debt. But just so that you are aware that our debt, and I've just got a report this morning so I can give you updated figures, our debt is sort of three categories. We have our foreign debt that is owed to foreign banks and other entities. We have our domestic debt that is owed locally. And then, because of new accounting, we also need to include, when we look at the NIA debt, the debt of statutory corporations. So the debt of NEVLEC, Housing and Land, Tourism Authority, NASPA, etc. So let me get to the figures now. Our debt as of July 2023, our total foreign debt stood at $30.8 million, 30.8. It has decreased from the figure of 33.7 million, which it was at the same time last year. So we have been making some progress on reducing our foreign debt, which has gone from 33.7 million down to 30.8 million. These are EC dollars. We have, in terms of our domestic debt, NIA domestic debt, that number stands at $449.4 million. 449.4, that is the total domestic debt. When that is combined then with the foreign debt, we have a total NIA debt, that is the debt of the central government, at 480.3 million EC dollars. While we have seen a reduction in the foreign debt from $33.7 million at July 2022 to $30.8 million at July 2023, we have seen an increase in the local or domestic debt from $414.3 million as of July last year to $449.4 million as of July this year. And that increase has largely been associated with the road projects that have been ongoing. In terms of government guaranteed debt, that is now for our public corporations, we have debt for the Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation, debt for the Nevis Tourism Authority, debt for the Nevis Electricity Company Limited, debt for the Nevis Air and Seaports Authority, and that total public sector debt comes up to $36.7 million. $36.7 million. When then you combine the debt, $36.7 million, of the public corporations with the central government debt of $480.3 million, we have a cumulative total debt position of the island of Nevis at this point, that is central government plus the corporations of $544.7 million EC dollars. By any measure, it is a significant number, and therefore we have to utilize all efforts to seek to reduce that number and to bring greater debt relief and greater management of that debt so that it does not escalate further. Of note, as I looked at these numbers, is that the Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation currently has an external debt of $5.8 million to Unit Trust Corporation, AIC Merchant Bank in Trinidad. That debt, as of July last year, stood at $6.4 million. It has now been reduced, as of July this year, to $5.8 million. The reason that I mention that debt is because that debt ought not to have still been on our books. And I have been bombarded with calls from citizens and residents who purchased land in the Nugent Heights area, and in this area where we are now having this press conference in the Pinnies area, and were sold lands. Some have, in fact, even built homes and have no title to their land, no title to their property. And the reason for that was that we had borrowed monies from Unit Trust Corporation, AIC Merchant Bank in Trinidad, to purchase Pinny's estate. And we turned around and sold some 600 acres of the lands that we had purchased with those monies. The previous CCM-led government, led by the Honorable Vance Amory, had deposited with Scotiabank, as it then was, $10 million US. And the reason behind that was that that 10 million US was to act as security for repayment of the Unit Trust Corporation, AIC Merchant Bank. Government change in 2006. And the then new NRP government, led by the Honorable Joseph Parry as Premier, somehow decided to use that 10 million US dollars for other reasons, other purposes, and did not pay the debt in Trinidad. Now, what I find is unfortunate is that while that money was taken out of the bank and used elsewhere, lands were being sold, Trinidad was not being paid. And so the Unit Trust in Trinidad took a position that they would not lift their caveat to allow any transfers to anybody until they receive their payment in full. And so we now have a lot of people who are holding land, have paid for land, but have no title and cannot get their title. Some of those people have now been coming back to the government and saying to us, we want back our money. Some have said they want back their money with interest. We have to come up with 5.8 million. We have been paying. This government through Land and Housing has been paying, but we still owe $5.8 million to the Unit Trust Corporation, AIC Merchant Bank. So the 10 million US disappeared. The money from the sales disappeared. And we are left with the debt still to pay, and people who can't get their title. This jumped out at me because I wanted to mention it as one of the difficult situations that we've been having to grapple with in terms of debt. So we have now to find this 5.8 million, and I'm appealing to those out there who bought lands in the area to be patient with us. We are trying our very best to liquidate this debt because the entity in Trinidad has said only upon liquidation will we discharge our caveat, and then you can register the various titles for people. I feel a deep sense of empathy for Nevisians and others who would have paid their hard-earned money for a piece of land. In instances, paid that money back in 2008, 2009, so in some cases well over a decade ago, and cannot up to now get title. But I want the public to understand why and the difficulties associated with getting this title. So we still owe 5.8 million to Trinidad, and we're trying our best to liquidate that debt as quickly as we can so that we can bring some relief. But as I said, Mr. Dixon had asked me that question. I did not have the numbers to hand. I've now brought them so that the press and the public can have an idea as to what those numbers are. Now that gives me an opportunity to segue into an appeal that I want to make. We have been at the Inland Revenue Department doing some analysis, and I believe that it now seems quite clear that some of our businesses and some of our people engaged in activities on the island are not paying their taxes. They're either not paying their taxes or they're not paying their fair share of taxes. Some of the people would surprise us. I'm not going to engage in any naming and shaming. But I am appealing to our people to do what is right. It is sometimes for me the curiosity of our existence that the same people who refuse to pay their taxes are the first in line to criticize the government and say we're not fixing the road and we're not fixing the water, and we're not fixing the electricity, and we're not fixing the hospital, and we're not doing all of these things. But we can't do them without taxes. We can't do them without collecting what is due. We are not seeking to impose on anybody anything that is not due from them. We're simply saying, do the right thing. There are people on this island who want to conduct their business and want to charge you for their services and their goods, but they don't have a business license because they refuse to go in and regularize themselves by paying their business license. Some are employing people, but they don't want to pay Social Security, and so they're not contributing to Social Security. And I believe that those of us in leadership have a duty to appeal to our people to be responsible citizens. We at the Inland Revenue Department have said that if you are not paying or you have not paid, come in and talk to us. The policy of this government is that we prefer to collect than to take any form of draconian action against our people. So if you owe taxes and penalties and fines and all of that, interest, we have often been prepared to compromise. But we are saying, come in, have a conversation, work out a payment plan, but please pay your taxes. Those people who are using electricity but refuse to pay, they're using water but refuse to pay, they get their garbage collected but they refuse to pay, what is it, $25 a month for collecting their garbage, and they refuse to pay. Now, what if the garbage truck doesn't come around and that garbage is allowed to stay there? I guarantee you, if it's even allowed to stay there for a day or two, social media and the radio stations will be lit up with calls and with comments about how garbage piling up around the area. But yet, our people do not wish to pay. And I'm asking our people because the impositions are not onerous. In relation to water and electricity, it's based on what you use. And in relation to solid waste, it's a fixed charge across the board. Please do the necessary. At $25 a month to collect garbage, you're not even paying $1 a day. Less than $1 per day to collect your garbage, to make sure that Nevis remains clean and free of disease. In relation to taxes, we have our VAT, we have our unincorporated business tax, and we realize that some of the people who are best placed to be paying their taxes are the ones who are trying to be, I want to use gentle language, who are not paying their taxes. Let me say that. I can confirm to the public that all the law firms in Nevis right now are being audited. All. That we have raised some concerns with the law firms, we have raised some concerns with realtors and others, and the Inland Revenue is now taking a position that they are auditing these various entities to ensure that they are paying what is due from them. I would want the public to understand that the audit procedure is one that's available to the tax authorities when they have a concern and they want to be sure that what is being declared and what is being paid is consistent with the facts. And I will tell you that some of the reporting from some of the business entities, just on its face, would make you wonder. Because they're business entities that are employing people, that are paying rent in Charleston and all of that, and are reporting, for example, that they only make $15,000 and $20,000 for the month. When you know, based on their rent and their staff and the payment for themselves, that could not possibly be the case. If that were the case, they would have to close down a long time ago. So I'm appealing. So we are currently auditing law firms. We're looking at the real estate sector as well. And we're going from sector to sector. I'm just alerting because I want to indicate that all law firms are being looked at, all. And we are going from sector to sector just to ensure that persons and businesses are paying what they're supposed to pay. We're not asking you to pay more. We're asking you to pay what you're supposed to pay. Property tax, another issue. A lot of people are not paying their property tax. In fact, sometimes only when they sell a piece of property and it comes now for the transfer and the Inland Revenue refuses to do the transfer unless the property taxes are paid, do they rush in now to pay up for years of unpaid taxes. Again, we're asking, please, come in and do the right thing. Come in, regularize your affairs, make sure that your tax matters are in order, and in so doing, you help the island and help us to be able to deliver the services and the goods that the public is demanding of us. We have tools available to Inland Revenue, including taking legal action. The NEVLEC and Water Department, they have tools available to them, including disconnection. I believe there was a saying some time ago, we prefer to collect than disconnect. That's still the case. So we are urging our people to do the right thing so that we are not taken to a point where we are forced to take draconian action. We don't want to take anybody to court. We want people to be responsible. I've been in the court sometimes and seen Social Security, for example, take people to court, sometimes $50. But I think it's a principle is that you have to pay. It is important that you do so. And what we have said from Inland Revenue, Water Department, NEVLEC, all of that, if you can't pay all of it, if you're having a difficulty, please come in and talk to us. Please come in. We are more than willing to come to an arrangement, but we are asking you to do the right thing and to be a responsible citizen. We do not want to contemplate that there may be people out there who deliberately engage in underreporting or otherwise defrauding the Treasury and the Inland Revenue. Because, again, these are the resources that the island needs if the island is going to deliver on the goods and services that our people demand. I will leave it there and take such questions as you may have for me. And thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to update you in terms of what has been happening.
Donella Thompson, Vaughan Radio. Good morning, Premier Brantley.
Good morning.
I have a total of 3 questions. In relation to the geothermal project, we know that last December after the elections, it was stated that drilling would have started in June. Also, the bidding date was extended back in April. So can an update be provided? What is the status of the Alexandra Hospital Wing expansion project? And the Ministry of Education implemented a new system in the secondary school level where students were placed in classes without separating them by streams. That was the A1s, the A2s, and so forth. How has the progress been with that new system so far? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thompson, for your questions as always. You're right that we've had some slippage in relation to our dates on geothermal. As you know, we were quite excited that we had made good progress. The Caribbean Development Bank had approved some $18 million when they met in their final meeting last year, December 9th, I think it was, of 2022. And we had anticipated we'd be moving quite quickly. The dates that I gave were the dates that I had been given, that we anticipated that drilling contracts would have been awarded by June. We had some slippage because when the bidding process did not go as well as we would have liked, we had considerable interest being shown, but then it appears that there were some technical issues of the form of contract. I heard terms like FIDIC contract being used and some drillers saying that that may not be the appropriate form. And so we have been having a back and forth. The experts and the consultants at the CDB level, those here at NEVLEC, which is a lead agency for us, have been going back and forth. Suffice it to say that the last update that I had was that they have now decided to go back to some of the bidders, but not a general open bidding as they did before, but certain individual firms who have the capacity have been approached. And so I'm told that we should have expected some results from that process by the end of this month, August. I'm to check to see whether or not that has in fact materialized, but that is what I was told. If that is the case, then unfortunately we would have lost a few months, but we still anticipate that we will have contracts and a drill in place by the end of this year. The problem with these projects, Ms. Thompson, and the public, is that they don't often go as fast as we would like them to go because so many various entities are involved. So, for example, because we're getting funding through the CDB, and the CDB is using funds that have been placed with the CDB from IDB and other institutions, the problem that creates for us is that each of those institutions has their own rules in terms of what needs to be done before the funds can be dispersed. As government sometimes, for example, we can say, we need this road built, and because of the urgency or the speed, we select a contractor. Go ahead and build the road. These agencies can't do that. So they have to go through a bidding process. It has to be open. It has to be left open for a particular period of time. Questions have to be answered, etc. Bids have to be evaluated. And then if none of the bidders are acceptable, you have to then go back through another process. Right? So that is the way it is, and for me, it's a torturous process, but I'm content that we are working on it, and we expect that we'll get there. In terms of the hospital project, I had hoped today that I would have had an update, but I do not. And the reason I do not is because we are still waiting on some quantity surveys that are to be done. We had hired and paid for those to be done by a professional on St. Kitts. Suffice it to say that that professional has taken the money but not delivered. And so we have been forced midstream to change course. I'm told now that we have outsourced that activity to an entity in the US, and I hope that I should be able to come back to you in short order with an update on that. And if not myself, then the Minister of Health should be able to come with an update. If that update comes prior to my next press conference, we will share that update. The new education system, you're right, there were some changes made. I'm old school, I must tell you. I'm accustomed to the streaming, the 1A1 and the 1A2. I confess that I don't quite understand how absent streaming, you put children together because children learn at different paces, and it would suggest to me that those who are more academically inclined earlier, that they would potentially be kept back by those who are less academically inclined, but I'm not an expert. And so the experts have determined that we have a new system. In terms of the evaluation of that new system, I'm told that that process is ongoing. So I don't have a response for you yet because I think the suggestion I've got is that it's too early to really be able to tell whether that new system has yielded the benefits that some think it will yield. And so I would have to ask you to come back with that question maybe in another several months when that ongoing evaluation can really tell us whether we have some trends in the right direction or not.
Good morning, Mr. Premier.
Good morning.
Elke Hewlett, Department of Information. I have some questions from some other media houses who would have not been able to come over but would have submitted their questions, so I'll ask those after. I'll give you a chance to answer the ones for myself. Can you speak to the criteria for the qualifications for the daycare program, like whether it will be based on income level? Budget meetings, I know, are coming up for the various departments. Are there any new fiscal measures that will be put in place to curtail expenditure? Any thoughts on partnering with external entities with respect to housing, similar to what St. Kitts is proposing? Also, the matter of the Indian Castle lands. I know there was some talk about how the government went about getting it prepared for the fruit orchard. If you can clarify that matter, thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hewlett. Criteria for the daycare program, those will be spelled out at the launch. And the launch, as I said, will be happening on the 7th of September at the Malcolm Gishard Park, 5 p.m. and the minister and her team will preside over that and set out what the criteria is going to be, but it will be based on need. The criteria will be to assist those who require that assistance, as I explained earlier. What the specifics are, they will outline those at that program, and so I'm hopeful that the press will be able to attend. The budget meetings for new departments, will we be curtailing expenditure? The short answer is we have approached our budgetary process in two ways. Yes, we try to curtail, tighten up in terms of expenditure, make sure that we minimize waste, but there's also a need on the revenue side to enhance our revenue collection. The two go hand in hand. And so when I made the case earlier about some persons not paying their taxes or not paying what they should pay, that is part and parcel of the approach that we hope to take, that we encourage businesses and individuals to pay what is due from them, and at the same time, we exercise greater, how should I say, we approach spending in a more judicious way in terms of ensuring that our expenditure is kept within the budgeted norms. Part of the problem we have from year to year is that some unbudgeted expenditure tends to happen, and that is always a challenge. So, for example, you may not budget for a double salary, but then a double salary is announced, and because of the practice, if it's announced in Bastille, then we say, well, all right, we have to follow suit. Those are some of the examples that sometimes, you have torrential rain and roads get washed out. You have to repair them. God forbid you have a storm or hurricane. So these are some of the examples. And so we have to ensure that we try our very best to stay within our budgeted totals. And on our projects, we have to ensure that those projects are delivered on time and within budget. You asked about approaching external sources for housing. It's interesting, Ms. Hewlett, that you asked that question, because it was only yesterday that I continued a conversation with a group out of Turkey. And that group has a particular construction methodology that they feel they can deliver housing at far more affordable rates than currently apply. The information that they've sent has gone to the Housing and Land Corporation, and that information will also be shared with planning to determine whether or not what they are suggesting, which is a far more affordable option for housing, is viable here. We have to ensure that, of course, these are things that can adhere to our building code, can resist winds because we're in a hurricane zone, etc. They say that it can, but obviously this will be a matter for our local technical experts to evaluate. So we are at the very early stages of having a discussion. They have sent us some information. That information is being evaluated, and then we will determine whether or not what they're saying they have done elsewhere in the world can be replicated here in providing housing for our people. The Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation, through its own efforts, it continues to try to satisfy the demand of housing. I would just again, though, like to go on record to remind the public that the Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation, in its mandate, was to provide affordable housing for those who need that assistance. I want to emphasize that, because if you're in a position where you can go to the bank and get your mortgage and get your home built, then the NHLDC is not for you. That is for you to go to a private contractor and do what you're doing. A lot of people are saying they want a house, they want the government to build a house, because government houses is subsidized housing. You don't pay the same price as you would pay for materials, etc. But again, I want to emphasize that some of these programs and projects are for those who require that assistance. This is part of the safety net, provide housing for persons who might ordinarily not be able to afford housing. That is what these programs are designed to do. And I believe if persons went through the usual channels, it will take some of the pressure off of the NHLDC. But the short answer, Ms. Hewlett, is that yes, we will be looking at partnerships where those partnerships have some value. And you'll hear more about that as we move forward. You asked about the Indian Castle lands. I'm not quite sure as to the question, but let me, if I go off track, you know that'll bring me back on track, Ms. Hewlett. I think we have all seen the Indian Castle Fruit Orchard, and that is a project that we all have been proud of. In fact, it has attracted a lot of attention locally and regionally. It is some 35 or so acres, and it was designed to bring some element of food security back to the island. And I'm told that we have over 5,000 coconut palms that have been planted. We have a variety of other fruits, guavas, oranges, soursop, mango, you name it, that have been planted there. And it is being managed at this time by Mr. Ronald King and the Department of Agriculture. I'm advised that they're doing an excellent job. I've been able to visit on a few occasions, and I continue to encourage members of the press to visit. It is really worthwhile going there to see what has been created from lands that over the years have really been just left there. And again, every time I talk about it, I must credit the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, because this was his brainchild. It was his team that put this together, and they're doing quite well. In fact, I'm told those coconut palms are already starting to bear. And if that is the case, many people in Nevis don't realize that we've been importing coconuts, you know. A lot of this jelly water, as we call it, coconut water that we see being sold on the side of the roads, those coconuts actually imported. And for those as old as I am, we remember a time when Nevis was full with coconut palms. We had a disease, lethal yellowing, that wiped them out. And the result has been that we're now importing coconuts. So importing and planting 5,000 palms and having the vision to do that. And then, of course, now to be in a position where we can reap coconuts, really, to my mind, talks about the quality of leadership that we've had in agriculture. Ms. Hewlett, I saw some recent hubbub from the opposition about some additional lands that were being cleared next to the existing fruit orchard. And those additional lands we started the clearing there to do another phase. Basically, we were going to expand from the 35 acres that we have. We were going to expand by doing a similar number of acres next door. That project started with the land clearing. It has not advanced at the pace that we would have liked, but certainly that is still the ambition, that we would be able to plant particularly more coconuts, which is a cash crop, on those lands. I am told by the Ministry of Agriculture that the second phase was approved conceptually in June of 2022, having witnessed the success of the original phase, and that we are still intent on expanding into that second phase, that the lands for the second phase are on the east of the established plot that is currently populated with plants, and the land is some 42 acres. A contractor was hired, a Grandson's Backbone Trucking Services, and that contractor would have worked for a period of 6 months, from September 2022 to February 2023. So it started last year and continued into this year. And the value of the invoices submitted thus far, I'm told, is $406,000. In fact, to be precise, $406,390. So that is the amount that would have been invoiced for the 6-month period from September 2022 to February 2023, because the work started last year. As I said, the project was approved in June 2022. The work started in September of 2022, and that work ended in February of 2023, and the value is $406,390. Now, this figure was over the initial estimate, as the Ministry of Agriculture is saying that they urged the contractor to slow the job, as they wanted to, as much as possible, preserve the topsoil on the land. So normally the contractor would just clear, but they asked to take his time, essentially, because they wanted to preserve the topsoil. And there were some additional areas that were cleaned that were not initially contemplated, such as the guts on both sides of the plot. So that is why the figure is a little higher than we would have anticipated. Now, the hubbub that I would have heard is again indicative of the dishonesty that pervades the opposition and their pronouncements. Because somebody drew to my attention some comments being made by the opposition that we cleared some 65 acres of land at a cost of $1.3 million, and making all kinds of wild and defamatory allegations against people that some kind of corruption was involved in that. I think it's unfortunate because a simple call could have given the information that I would have just given. 42 acres. That is the land, and $406,390 is the amount. 6 months of work started September 2022 to February 2023. Now I'm hearing all kinds of things about money was paid out, $1.3 million, that was election money, you know. Well, if it was election money, election was December of 2022. So how come work is still continuing in January and in February? Makes no sense. But these wild allegations are just trotted out. Persons are sharing and resharing and talking. I see some newspaper ragging Sinkits has picked up something and say, oh, corruption at the NIA. Simple. When you start from a premise of lies and a premise of misleading, and then build a story on that premise. So I say, I saw P.S. Daniel on the Pay and Sinkits this morning. You see where P.S. Daniel here? He's right here in the press conference at the Premier's Ministry. But I say, I saw him at the Pay and Sinkits this morning. And I want to know what he's doing there. What he went down there for, who he went to meet. It's some deal they're trying to do. He gone down there to pick up money. He gone to the... And right away, a whole story is concocted. But the only problem is Mr. Daniel was never in Sinkits. And that is what the opposition keeps doing on the island. They keep making up stories, and then on the basis of the story they've made up, they build a platform for making allegations against people. So the story was that some 65 acres of land was cleared at a cost of $1.3 million. As the old people say here, and we say in our local parlance, nothing tall go so. Nothing tall go so. But just like how we had the alarm raised of the invasion of the German cockroaches at Ivor Walters Primary, and the school have to shut down because of this. Breaking news. Prior to that, it was a bat infestation at Ivor Walters Primary. Breaking news. Only problem, none of it is true. None of it is true. And this is being put out continually by people who claim that they have the necessary bona fides to run the affairs of Nevis. And I am concerned about where we're headed. I don't mind the debate. If somebody were to say, oh, you all don't have the orchard, don't expand it. Expanding it is a bad idea. It will use too much water. It is unnecessary. That is a legitimate debate, but don't make up things and then use what you have made up to attack people. You hear what I said here again? The money was paid, 6 months of work, starting in September of last year to February. Well, how could that money be election money if election was in December? So you mean after the election money still being spent? Makes no sense. How does $406,000 become $1.3 million? It makes no sense. I recall buying a vehicle, you know, members of the press. From my money. As long as I know myself, I've never, ever taken up anything that doesn't belong to me. My money. And I asked the agent to deal with the licensing and all that. And one of these same NRP operatives, bent as they seem to be on misinformation. Took a photo of the vehicle. Before I saw my vehicle, it was on social media saying this was the cost. And I think they said the vehicle cost $200 and something thousand. It looks like somebody must have called him and said, boy, that's too low. So they then edited the post and say, oh, it costs $500 and something thousand. And I'm pretty sure if somebody had called and said that's still too low, they would have edited further to say it costs $1 million. It is just, for me, so terribly unfortunate where we have got to on this island, that the facts don't seem to matter at all. The reality of the situation doesn't seem to matter. All we need is a breaking news. Breaking news. So the breaking news that there was some big thing down there at Indian Castle, I've now brought the facts to you. 42 acres of land for the second phase, and those 42 acres over a 6-month period of clearing from September 22nd, 2022 to February 2023, $406,390. That amount is more because we asked the people not to disturb too much of the topsoil, and they cleared 2 guts that were not part of the original contemplation. Those are the facts. Is there anything alarming there? Those are the facts. And so I just want the public to understand. I have prided myself as the Premier of Nevis, and I have said to the people of Nevis that I intend to be upfront, I intend to be honest, open, and transparent with them. Members of the press, I know you get frustrated sometimes because you come and you ask me questions, and if I don't have the answer, I tell you I don't have the answer, I'm going to go and come back. You know why I do that? It's because I want always to ensure that I give you accurate information. I want always to give you factual information. We recall a situation where the former Minister of Health went into the Nevis Island Assembly and gave a report as to the money spent thus far at the new wing at the hospital. The new minister went the following budget and gave a different figure. And I came here, and I didn't shy away from it. Clearly, the 2 figures can't be correct. And we went and painstakingly took the time. Unfortunately, it took longer because we had been hacked and lost some information. But we reconstituted, and I was able to come and give you the precise figure down to the penny that has been spent thus far at the new hospital. And you know what? Even with that, you still hear the outlandish claims about 30 million and 40 million and way over budget and all of this nonsense. Notwithstanding that you took the time and you tell people this is what the position is. We are not a government that seeks to obfuscate, seeks to mislead. I have come this morning and I've told you what the debt is. I'm not going to run away from it or hide from it. That is what it is. We need to do something about it. We need to trend downwards. We are seeing a downward trend in our foreign debt, but the domestic debt also needs to come down. Part of bringing it down is controlling expenditure, but part of bringing it down is also trying to collect revenue that is owed to the government. And we will do those things. But this is not a government that seeks to hide from the people of Nevis. I remind you, members of the press, that prior to my administration, a monthly press conference did not exist on Nevis. Prior to my administration, no Integrity in Public Life Commission existed in Nevis. We were not filing our assets and liabilities with the IPL. It simply did not exist. And so I continue to say that as a government, we have demonstrated, not just talked about openness, not just talked about good governance, we have demonstrated it by our actions. And I've come here month after month and updated you and done so with as much clarity as I can muster, and most importantly, with as much accuracy as I can muster. And I would want our people out there to really start to pay attention. because some who are commenting the most have a track record of misleading the people of Nevis and having been found out. Found out. Breaking news, cockroach infestation closes the school. I get so frightened I call the principal, I ask her, what's going on? It's my alma mater. What's going on at Ivor Walters? She said, what do you mean? Premier, what do you mean? School running fine? No problems? And the depths to which some of them will go. A young lady recently succumbed to an illness. And rather than using the opportunity to extend condolences, they jump on social media, oh, the building, government building have mold, and the mold lead to sickness. And why engage in that when people are suffering, people are struggling? A family that has just lost a loved one, but you try your best to make politics out of it. And every time there's a mishap, every time there's an accident, every time there's a death, you find a way to try and take it and transform it into something negative and something political. Regardless of who it hurts, regardless of the damage that you can cause to people. I think we need to stop it. We can do much better. And I've come, as I said, Ms. Hewlett, I hope I didn't go off track, but since that this information has been out there percolating, it was sent to me, I wanted to give the public the accurate information so that they know what exactly happened with the proposed phase 2 at Indian Castle. And I would want to give our commitment that we are still going to deliver on that project, because having learnt the lessons from the first phase and seeing the success of the first phase, we're going to do that second phase. I am hoping that those 5,000 coconut trees and the coconuts that they're going to bear, and how popular coconut water is on the island now, that we are going to be able to stop the importation, because you now can get them locally, and that they will help to pay as we expand our production into the next phase. As I say that though, let me end by doing what I normally do, is remind our people not to go in there and take up what they didn't put down. We are doing the orchard down there. We have valuable fruit, vegetables down there. They are for the government to supply its institutions, and also for the government to recoup some monies so as to replant and replenish and ensure that that orchard continues to progress and that we can execute on the second phase as well. So I hope that that puts whatever concerns to rest, and I'm happy to have provided that clarification. Ms. Hewlett, you said you had some other questions for me.
Elke Hewlett again. I'm asking this question on behalf of Mr. Glenn Batt from SKN Newsline. Well, these questions, because he has several. In relation to the proposed South Coast Road, will it be necessary for the NIA to obtain easement if lands involved are privately owned? If that is necessary, about what percentage of the land will require that legal channel? Also, has any rough estimate been done in regards to cost, as well as the scope of the work been done for this project? What is the current level of pressure being applied from the EU countries in regards to financial services? Was the recent legislative amendment a response to any external pressure being applied to the sector? I also have a question from WinFM. I'm not certain who would have submitted it, but they did. There's a document in circulation in relation to the Hamilton Reserve Bank in Barnes Gut, stating that the bank failed to submit audited annual financial statements for a couple of years. Is that allegation true? And can you provide, oh, so you already did an update on the quantity surveying report for the hospital. Thanks. So that last one was from WinFM.
Thank you very much. Let me go to the question that you asked from Mr. Bart. South Coast Road, will we require easements? Yes, because that road will traverse some lands that are not government lands. So we'll either require easement or we'll have to do some acquisition, but either way, the South Coast Road is a project that we're committed to. Rough estimated cost and the scope of the work. Mr. Bart, we don't have that yet. We have just finished, I believe, what's it called? A request for proposals, I think we've done, where we're asking for that scope of work to be done. So we've actually put out something through Public Works, I'm told, inviting experts to come in and advise us on that road and the scope. So we'll be in a much better position in the next few months, I hope, to be able to tell you what the suggested cost of that is going to be. We did make some changes to financial services legislation, largely to modernize the legislation. So, for example, we introduced things like electronic signatures. Before times we had to do a wet signature, which is just the actual, pen and paper, so to speak. We've now introduced the possibility to file documents with electronic signatures. So that was done by us. And then we removed the bearer share. And I explained that in the Parliament, that the bearer share basically was a share certificate, which all it said on it was bearer. And whoever held it physically was the owner. And so you can transfer ownership of bearer shares simply by delivering the bearer share certificate, with no notation being made in the register of shareholders. And so that was potentially quite dangerous. We had, some years ago, ameliorated the situation by immobilizing bearer shares and saying that they now had to be held by an authorized custodian. So the government here would authorize an individual or company as a custodian, which had to then immobilize. And so we would say there could be no movement of the bearer shares from one person to another, otherwise than through that authorized custodian. We have now abandoned bearer shares altogether. So Nevis no longer allows bearer shares. And that is, again, one of the efforts that we've made to ensure that we stay ahead of the regulatory requirements, that we are open and transparent in terms of our sector. And so I'm not aware of any specific pressure from the EU or anyone else. These are measures that we are taking to improve our services, improve our sector, both in terms of modernizing the technology that is being employed, but also to ensure that we stay on the cutting edge in terms of our regulatory regime. We want to be known, as we are known, as a well-regulated jurisdiction. And we are trying our very best to ensure that we keep that reputation, and that is why we would have taken the step to abolish the bearer shares. Just so those who may be listening know that the service providers will be given an opportunity, I think it is up to 6 months, to convert those bearer shares to registered shares. And so now there will be a need that all shares issued will have a registration. So there will be an ability to track who owns companies rather than the old system of having bearer shares. In relation to the Hamilton Reserve Bank, I am not aware of what these reports are, or whether these reports are coming from any credible source. What I can say to you, Winifem, is that as far as I'm advised, Hamilton Reserve Bank, like all other institutions, have been required to submit their audited reports. I'm told that their audited reports have in fact been submitted each year. This year there were some delays with them and with one other institution, but I'm advised that that is being resolved and that we expect that those audited reports for this year, that is for the last financial year, that is 2022, that those will be in with the regulatory people in short order. Managing the regulatory regime for financial services is tough. Issues arise. I, however, have absolute confidence in our regulatory team that those issues are being managed and managed as effectively as possible. What I think happens is that sometimes particular clients have issues with institutions in the financial services sector. They hire their lawyers, they have law firms working for them and all that. But rather than taking steps that are available to them, they keep coming to the government and saying to the government, oh, Tom owes me money and is not giving me my money. Or Harry and I had a contract and Harry's not honoring the contract. And we are saying to them, do what you're supposed to do. Sue Tom, sue Harry, go to the court. You know, that's what lawyers do. If Ms. Hewlett, if you and Ms. Thompson have a contract now and Ms. Thompson doesn't honor the contract, you shouldn't be calling the government to tell the government Ms. Thompson is not honoring the contract. You hire your lawyers and you and Ms. Thompson, you all deal with that. And so unfortunately I find oftentimes the burden of some of these things are being put on the regulator and on the government. And we are saying to people that, listen, where there are genuine regulatory issues, we will respond. Where there are other issues involving, personal business relationships, that is for the parties to work out amongst themselves. But I'm not aware of any report or any report suggesting that audited reports for the last several years have not been submitted. That would be inaccurate if there's such a report.
Just one other question. Elke Hewlett again. There is some concern, well, not concern, but St. Kitts has issued some guidelines with respect to the schools and the hairstyles. And on St. Kitts, they're now saying that traditional haircuts, natural locks, afros, and cornrows are permitted for male and female students. I think that would be at the high school level, I'm not certain. Do you know if that will also pertain to Nevis?
I believe that the cabinet of the Nevis Island Administration has, in fact, approved some guidelines for hairstyles for schools on Nevis, which follow, to a great extent, what is being done federally, but also departs to some extent. I believe, for example, that we, I don't have the document in front of me, but I believe, for example, cornrows for the boys, I don't think that was approved in Nevis. Right? We don't know why youngsters have to go to school, male with cornrows. We have, I think that there was an issue about the length of the male, the length of the hair. There were issues about braids, I know things like beads. The girls put in braids and put in these beads. I would ask the Ministry of Education in Nevis to put out something. What we did was we stayed true to what we had before, and we tweaked it to some extent to take into account some, not all, but some of what was being proposed on St. Kitts. So the public schools in Nevis would have to adhere to those requirements that were set out. But I don't have it in front of me. I did not anticipate that that would come up. So I will have the guidelines from the Ministry of Education sent through you at the information service so that you could disseminate accordingly.
Has any assessment, Elke Hewlett again, has any assessment been done as to the regards with the CSEC and CAPE results from CXC for Nevis students?
Ms. Hewlett, no, it's been too early. The CAPE results were only released, I think, yesterday or the day before. So yesterday is Monday, yeah. So I think it was yesterday that the CAPE results were released. So we really have not had the opportunity yet to do that analysis. That analysis would normally be done. And frankly, it is usually during the budget discussions that the minister will make a fulsome report, and that's not until December. But we will do that analysis. It's a traditional thing, but it's just been far too early. I think people are still getting their results, and so we'll have to await that analysis from the education officials. One of the things that I do notice is that I'm seeing that some subjects are ungraded. And that is a concern, in terms of the number of students whose subjects are ungraded. And we would want to ascertain what the reasons for that might be. As I'm hearing in one instance that SBAs may not have been submitted in time. That is, unfortunate, terribly unfortunate if that's the case, because the student is who ultimately is affected. So I would be very interested to know why some subjects are ungraded. But other than that, that analysis will come in due course. Anything further for me? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This has been short and sweet, unlike some of the other press conferences I've dragged on. I really appreciate you being here, and I look forward to seeing you next month again as we engage government and press to try to get to the bottom of some of these issues and to disseminate accurate information. Thank you. God bless you.